Welcome everyone to the Co-Creators Convergence Thursday night Creator Convos. I'm Noelle Marshall, and I'm here with my beloved.
Hi, everybody. This is Bob Warner. What a delightful evening we're going to have. So wonderful that Shelley has brought Stephen here. Looking forward to this new conversation. We're all new today, so this is absolutely going to be a wonderful evening. Thank you both for being here.
We're all new today. You sound like Barbara Marx Hubbard. She was declared every day. I'm new today. So hello, Barbara. I think she always makes our Thursday nights. So welcome, everyone. Thank you, Shelley, for bringing Stephen. And, I'm going to tell you about the guests we have coming up, a little bit about Co-Creators Convergence and about the guests we have coming up. And also to let you know that CCC is celebrating its 10th anniversary in Costa Rica, October 21st to the 28th. So if you haven't made any plans for that time, just check us out. It's going to be an awesome time. So sit back, relax. You can turn off your video, mute yourself, but there will be time for questions and answers. And you're always welcome to put questions and comments in the chat as we go along. So stand by. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Co-Creators Convergence. So thank you everyone for coming tonight. I'm very excited to have my dear friend, Shelley Darling of many, many years here. Yay, Shelley, and Stephen Dynako. And I understand that this is one of a premiere, shall we say, of what he has been putting together. We've been following his progress for several years. And want to let you know that it's okay to put any questions, comments. We will have Q&A at the end. So before we begin, I want to tell you a little bit about my friend, Shelley Darling. And let's see what we got about Shelley. She is dedicated, open-hearted, a master dowser. She's dedicated to a lifelong path of unconditional love, embodied heart awakening, and conscious evolution. Shelley is an international dowsing speaker and teacher. She is the founder of Evolutionary Dowsing, an initiator of the Sacred Evolutionary Dowsing Consortium. For over 35 years, Shelley has synergized the powerful modalities of Feng Shui and dowsing, infusing them with processes of personal somatic integration and ancient spiritual knowledge to create a dynamic whole systems model that upholds both the individual and collective transformational journeys. Shelley's deep and lifelong passion is to assist and empower individuals to come home to their hearts, fostering inner peace, prosperity, and sacred relationship with Earth. Now that's kind of the formal stuff about ShelleyDarling.com. So let me tell you a little bit more about Shelley. She has doused property for us in Maryland. And that turned out to be very successful. And we're very grateful for that. And she also has written a book that she's just recently released. And we had Shelley on a Thursday night conversation. And you can find that if you go to our website and just put in Shelley Darling, it will pop up. So Shelley, you can tell us the name of the book and how people can contact you. And she will be our super host for tonight. So I am going to go away. Shelley's going to lead us in a meditation, introduce Stephen. We're off to the races, and I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight, those in the room, those watching Facebook, and those of you picking up later on our, what do we call that? Website. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, my dear friend. I mean, I love this lady. Thank you so much, Shelley, for doing this and bringing another good friend, Stephen Dynako. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Noelle, and welcome everyone, and get to see some faces I haven't seen before, and then some very dear friends who've taken this journey with us. So I have to just say, first of all, thank you, Bob and Noelle. And I have been involved with the Co-Creators Convergence from pretty much the get-go. And the fact that the evolution of this Thursday night gathering and then the yearly gatherings really bring and weave just this powerful group of people who are really being informed by the field and then informing us. And so I feel very privileged to be here tonight. And then beside that, I was asked to host Stephen tonight, and to be really honest, and this is actually really beautiful for anyone who would consider hosting or someone that you don't even know. Like I knew about Stephen before I knew I was going to host, but really only peripherally. And this has given me, that Bob and Noelle just said, okay, ask Shelley to do this, gave me the opportunity to really come out of my shell and to learn about someone who whose heart is really bringing forth, yes, about tonight about climate advocacy and planetary consciousness, but some things really started highlighting, and it became a delight to learn about this person and also know that I'm going to be informed here and expanded as well. So in terms of a race, I'm going to invite everyone to actually be willing to slow down and let go of all the racing and come here and bring all of your whole self present here tonight to meet Stephen and really the essence of his work. And first, we'll just do a little meditation, or I call it a heart resonance connection, and just invite everyone. Here we are, it's summertime, and people are out at the beach and they're doing all kinds of stuff, and just to invite you to be willing to really come back home. And I think that's really the essence of tonight's call too, is just coming back home to Gaia, coming back into sacred relationship, so that our movement is coming from a deep sense of peace and joy and resonance. So let's just all take a couple of deep, open breaths, calling in your whole soul self, that really that divine elder, that aspect of yourself that knows exactly where it's going. And we're just attuning to that field. And right now, just becoming conscious of your own energy. We've all come from different places, so just focusing on your heart, connecting with your own heart. And as you're doing that, collecting with the heartbeat of Gaia, that sense of that proverbial matrix, aliveness. And as you're breathing, just opening to being nurtured, filled. And just like the tree of life, as we breathe in and we allow our attention to rise and rise up, we just open to receiving the information that we precisely need tonight. And we connect with that vast information field, and we breathe that back down into our heart. And just being willing to take a pause here, a pause from your day, a pause to refresh and reset. Just feel that creative pulse. That sense of curiosity. And with that, just gratitude for how you're showing up. Knowing that your dream is being held in the highest regard. And with that, very gently coming back into the room, and this is what's coming to me, bringing your whole home self, bringing yourself home. So yeah, thank you. And so I want to introduce Stephen, and I will share, his shorter bio, but what really has stood out for me is first of all, that, his whole voice is about mainstreaming conscious evolution, supporting us all in living in the utmost essence of who we are, and that he's all about, I love this, it's time to get radical about making love our priority. And so tonight, that's what we're doing. We're going to be informed, but we're learning how to come deeper into that greater intimacy with the nature of all life, so that it not only becomes sustainable, so that it can be thriving, that we can feel that we are thriving. So a little bit about Stephen, and I think he's going to take us into some new places tonight. So you might know him as, he's definitely a generative, how would you call this? A generative, he is the living generative alliance. He's supporting generative alliances and endeavors. And he's inviting us to become more, like I was sharing, about communicating with the earth, how we can take care of her. And you might probably know him more in regard to his background in spirituality, working with Barbara Marx Hubbard. And also that tonight he's going to weave in for us. He has this incredible business background and working with corporate America in finance, and how that supports a greater consciousness on the planet, and how we can become to expand our capacities, right? So tonight we're going to hear a little bit about a financial technology platform called Raise Green, which I highly, after tonight, invite you to go find him on Facebook and go find his website, because there's some amazing posts that were so, they really supported a greater awakening inside me, things I had never really thought about. So with that, also just support of a positive societal and environmental impact. And I think, let me just see if there's anything else. What stands out is his leadership development, executive coaching, educational coaching, and his mission to help evolve generative endeavors. So with that, I'm going to pass it over to Stephen, and excited for all of us here and all of you on Facebook and social media. Welcome to tonight's call. Stephen, it's all yours.
Great. Thank you, Shelley. I appreciate that. Thank you for that introduction. I would say it's probably the most beautiful introduction anybody's ever made of me on a program. So thank you. I'm really deeply moved by that. And thank you for hosting this tonight. And thank you to Noelle and Bob for inviting me to be here. I don't take this platform for granted as a place to present. So I'm just grateful to honor everyone who's here live and those who are going to watch the recording, and just share about this work I'm doing. So thank you so much. So I'm going to start first just by echoing one of the things in the chat that I think Noelle put in is feel free to put any comments or questions in the chat as I present. I do want to make this as interactive as possible, and I prefer not to do it as a lecture. So I absolutely invite interaction. Put questions in the chat. Happy to have you, come on the mic or camera too for questions that way. I think we'll all get a lot more out of this the more interactive it is. So just want to put that out there. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and I trust that's come up okay. So I'm going to start with this picture. So really quick pop quiz, especially for the Barbara Marx Hubbard really deep followers who might know this piece of trivia. This was Earthrise. This photo was taken from Apollo 8, and it became famous for being like the first picture of Earth from outer space, as Apollo 8 was going over the surface of the moon. So can anyone tell me what Barbara called this picture? This is Earthrise. No? Okay. So Barbara called this picture like Earth's baby picture, right? So when you have a child and you take that very first picture and you really treasure it, this is what this was to Barbara. So this is the Earth's baby picture. It's the first time we're seeing the whole system all together as one, one piece that we could just soak into our visual consciousness. And Jean and John are in the audience tonight. And when I had visited their home in New Mexico a few years ago, they have I think it's this picture with a quote by Edgar Mitchell, who was so enamored and just moved by being in outer space that when he said what he really wanted to do was take politicians up to space and then point at the Earth and say, look at that. And that's your reason for leading and for being and for doing what you're doing, and not all the other egotistical stuff that tends to get wrapped up in politics. So there's that picture. And then let me move to another famous picture of Earth. Does anybody know what this is? It looks like probably nothing unless you really look close at it. So right here in the middle dot, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but there's this beam, the sun beam here, and then there's that. So this was taken in 1990 by Voyager 1 as it was leaving the solar system. Carl Sagan was the project lead on that project, and basically as Voyager 1 was about to leave the solar system, he had directed that the camera be turned around back towards Earth, and then snap this photo. And it's famously known as the pale blue dot. And if that first picture of Earthrise was amazing, I mean, just this underscores that, and times 1,000. because I'll read the quote that Carl Sagan wrote about this, and this is just part of what the essay, but he said is, look again at that dot. That's here, that's home, that's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you've ever heard of, every human being who ever was lived out their lives. And if you just ponder that, if you put we have this imaginative ability, so put yourself in your imagination out at Voyager 1 and be looking at this from that perspective, and realize like everything that we know of on Earth is in that little dot, right? And how amazing is that? And also how humbling is that? So if any of us suffer from big egos, all we got to do is look at Earth from this perspective, and maybe that'll shift some consciousness. But so that was Carl Sagan talking about this picture called Pale Blue Dot in 1990. So, and this next slide, is talking about this idea called anti-fragility. So we look at that pale blue dot way out from the end of the solar system, and we think, wow, Earth's really fragile, right? And like we're all out here seemingly alone, or at least where we have this corner of the universe where we're very remote, perhaps from any other life. So we think, Earth's really fragile, and it's sort of that's playing out in what we're experiencing with the climate, and I'll get into that in a moment. But that there is this idea of anti-fragility, and I like this idea because anti-fragile is different from being merely resilient, right? So Nicholas Taleb wrote this book, Anti-Fragile, and he said, fragile systems tend to fall apart when hit with a system shock, right? So it's pretty straightforward and obvious. Resilient systems, which is a lot of what we hear about, and working in finance, I worked in systems that were built to be resilient. So resilient or robust systems tend to stay the same when hit with a system shock. So part of the professional job of, working with these human-made systems on Earth is to make them resilient, so that if something happens, it can kind of be returned to stasis. In the way it was designed, and kind of pick up operating as it had been. Now, then we evolve that, right? So we're talking about conscious evolution, and if we evolve the idea of resilience, we get to anti-fragile. So anti-fragile systems actually change and evolve when hit with a system shock. So as we experience what we're experiencing on Earth right now with respect to climate change and even social change. I mean, this is not happening just in Earth systems, it's happening in our human systems as well. Think about how these things are happening and how the systems that underlie them are changing and evolving when hit with these shocks, right? So this isn't supposed to be a political talk at all, but I just to bring up a really quick observation I have about this is that in a government and politics, there's a certain contingent that is wanting the system to be resilient. Let's go back to the good old days. Let's go back to the way things were, because things were so great in the old days, right? And then there's a contingent that believes, well, we're evolving. Like, things change. This has been happening since the dawn of humanity, indeed since the dawn of the universe. But if we're just talking from a social perspective, certainly since the dawn of humanity, and we must change and evolve as the systems change and evolve, because each generation is going to do it differently from the generation before. So, so when I look back at this picture, I don't look at something fragile, but I hope and I pray and I look at something that I believe is anti-fragile. And we all participate in that. Okay, now we all know what this is. So with respect to the particular sector of work that I'm involved in right now, which is climate finance, financing initiatives that are working on solutions to climate change. You know, I was looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, well, like, where does my work right now fall? And I'm thinking, well, economics, you know, it's finance, it's pretty obvious. At least to me it was. And then I look at the rest of the circle and or the rest of this wheel, and I'm thinking, well, there's an environmental piece very obviously as well. There's a health, you know, the health of the environment, the health of human beings living on the earth. There's certainly an infrastructure piece. There's a science piece to it. A lot of the solutions that are being built have a scientific basis. There's a lot of research behind it. And in my estimation, there's also a very deep spiritual component, you know, so we're made in the image of the divine. How are we showing up to fulfill that with respect to the evolution that we are all participating in? Okay, so let me just pause real quick and just see if there's any comments or questions. And Shelley, you know, be grateful to get your quick feedback on all of this so far, if you're so moved.
Yeah, no, I'm definitely here. I can't highlight myself because you've got the screen up, but
that's okay.
I don't see myself. So in any case, yeah, I mean, for me, first of all, just you know, new words. We have someone in the audience who's all about the structure of words and, you know, never even heard of anti-fragile. And it makes so much sense. And again, very powerful, just bringing that in as a starting point to understand that, you know, we are evolving and our thoughts are evolving. Oh, thank you, Noel. Our thoughts are evolving. And yeah, and the other piece was, you know, that I just got this really big hit that the wheel is constantly moving, you know, and we think of it as something static, you know, where do I reside in this wheel? But the beauty is that, you know, in terms of our calling, in terms of Earth's calling, you know, as I'm hearing you, you know, it's kind of like I might end up being in different sectors of that wheel as I'm being called, and to you know, like tonight as a perfect example, just coming in and maybe I don't know a whole lot about climate advocacy, you know, and this is my opportunity. So that wheel pulls on our hearts and brings us into that evolutionary place. And so I'm really grateful. And to me, like the hub is love, you know, it's love is feeding it all. So I'll leave you there and open to anybody else. Jeannie White Eagle says, you're also involved in the education piece of the wheel of co-creation, granted a new perspective of education, but this piece touches most of the other sectors.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Jean. You know, and the other thing I was thinking as well is I was speaking to somebody the other day who living in Chicago, but from Africa. And very much is focused on the justice piece of this, right? Because we talk about climate justice for people in countries who are experiencing the most severe effects of what's happening right now. I mean, Noel put in the chat that July 4th was the hottest day on Earth in recorded history. Well, actually, so what happened was, I think it was the 3rd, the 4th, and the 5th all became progressively hotter. So they each broke the previous day's record. So I was going to send somebody an article about the 5th and say, oh yeah, just by the way, you know, just somebody who's interested in following this. And when I was looking for the article about the hottest day being the 5th, all of a sudden the article about the 6th pops up and say, well, wait a minute, you know, the 6th became the hottest day. So, and the other comment that I think Noel made was the, that, you know, the systems, and then Barbara taught this as well, as we all know, that systems, you know, they break down so that they can to evolve to the next level. So perhaps, you know, we're seeing that on Earth right now. So this is going to lead now into my introduction of Raise Green and my role there. So as Shelley mentioned, I had worked in the financial services industry before. I was on the dark side. I worked in the Death Star of that industry for many years. And as most of you know me more recently, I got involved in conscious business movement. I worked with Barbara. I also was in the ministry, had done chaplaincy and a number of more generative things that you're probably all more familiar with. So talk about a system shock. Last May, I was involved working on a project for a company that was involved in the conscious business realm. And then all of a sudden that abruptly that contract ended. And I was like, okay, now what do I want to do when I grow up? So what was coming to me, and this is my evolutionary impulse, was I would love to get back into finance, but I want to do it in a generative way and not an extractive way. And so this will also be a lesson for any of you who kind of work with these laws of attraction and intention, right? Because I just put it out there that this is what I wanted to get into, is merging my finance with my desire to serve, with conscious evolution. And I just remained open to the options. And then like this Raise Green opportunity came up, and last fall, Raise Green it's a relatively new company. It's been around maybe about 45 years or so. And it is a climate finance company. And it was looking for a cohort of impact partners. And these impact partners were essentially going to evangelize for the platform. So I signed up. I said, hey, I'm interested in doing this. I got accepted into it. And long story short, not only an impact partner, but have been recently tapped to do some other special projects for Raise Green. So if you're holding an intention, have faith in that, and just stick to it, and go through your dark night of the soul as you're waiting for it to happen if you have to, because I really believe in the power of intention to as part of our evolutionary ability to bring us to the places that we're supposed to be of service. So as I get into this presentation, for compliance reasons, I just need to tell you this is for informational purposes. I'm not offering a sale of any securities through this presentation. So that's the legal thing I need to say. But Raise Green, as it says here on the slide, is a climate investment platform. And here's sort of the problem that's addressed. 85% of Americans want sustainable investments, but few impact investing opportunities exist for the wider market. With a need to invest over $4 trillion per year, with a T, to prevent the worst impacts of climate change, we need to mobilize everyday Americans and give them a platform to potentially make a meaningful difference and earn a return. And that's where Raise Green comes in. So Raise Green is a platform that's here to scale up climate solutions such as solar. Raise Green was basically founded on the two founders' desire to democratize climate investing. So they were working on a solar project for the benefit of a community solar project, and really wanted the community to be able to invest in the project. And you don't have to be a millionaire to be part of Raise Green as an investor. So it's part of a crowdfunding platform, which means most of the offerings that Raise Green publishes or makes available on its platform can be invested in for as little as $100 for the most part. So, and that goes all the way up. So any company raising money on Raise Green can raise up to $5 million. So the investor universe is much broader than simply the high net worth individuals. It would include what we could call retail investors, who can invest anywhere from $100 to $2,500 a year, and then also institutions. So solar and storage, food and water resilience, biomaterials, energy efficiency, electric vehicles, other climate tech ventures. So pretty much anything that is any company that's doing something to help mitigate climate change is ripe for being an investor or a company offering securities on our platform. And let me, because I know a couple things came in. The Unitarian Universalist Church, big movement, divestiture. They didn't pass anything but got close. Yeah, so there's a big divestiture movement going on to encourage companies and institutions to divest from fossil fuel companies. And if I remember correctly, the very first religious spiritual institution to divest was the Quakers, because they're all about nonviolence, right? So, and I think actually they never even agreed at the beginning, from the very beginning, to invest in fossil fuel technology or fossil fuel infrastructure or companies. Is Raise Green doing anything for free energy? Potentially, not currently, but I would say that if there's an innovative solution and somebody's developing something around free energy and seeking funding, they're definitely somebody we would be interested in talking to. So I spoke about this a little bit. The first challenge was barriers to investment opportunities. So until recently, 9 out of 10 Americans have been mostly left out of opportunities to invest in private companies and local small businesses, right? So if you were an angel investor or a venture capitalist and a company needed or was seeking to raise $1 million, legally, as somebody who has say $500 wanted to invest, you legally couldn't do that according to the securities regulations in the United States. Those private offerings were generally available only to what were called accredited investors, which means they were high net worth. There were some exceptions to that, but for the most part, I couldn't put my $500 in any private company that was not listed on the stock exchange. So that's what this slide is saying. So Raise Green provides the platform for thousands of Americans to invest directly in climate solutions. And basically the way that happened was in 2012, there was something called the Jobs Act passed in the United States, and that allowed crowdfunding platforms to raise money for private companies. And I think what it is, the securities regulator saw that crowdfunding was here to stay, and companies wanted to raise money for their companies using crowdfunding. So rather than try to regulate it out of existence, they basically said, okay, we need to embrace this in some way. So they created what's called Regulation CF, that allows crowdfunding platforms to raise actual debt and equity securities for companies.
Hey, Stephen,
Yes.
you want to just take a minute? And I know some people aren't, they don't like to necessarily type in the chat. Would you want to just see the gallery, and maybe we can just check in, because you're moving like, great and fast. And I just want to make sure that if people have questions or, who have never even considered doing this because they absolutely knew they didn't even have that kind of money, all of a sudden you're saying, hey, here's an opportunity. So I just want to check and just let anyone, if you feel to ask Stephen a question or something is bubbling in your consciousness about what he's sharing, feel free to take yourself off mute and come jump in.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not attached to my slides, so if I don't get to all of them, it's absolutely fine. I'd rather have the conversations.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
This is fascinating and wonderful to know that this is happening. Noel had mentioned in the chat that we were recently at the General Assembly of Unitarian Universalists, and there's a movement there by the young adults to change the $14 million endowment fund and divest. And one of the things that that the establishment, the investment committee and the board of directors and whatnot, talked about was the challenge of two things. One is moving things out of the fossil fuel companies and fossil fuel financing companies that they're currently invested in, the shock of doing that quickly, And secondly, also that there aren't many other alternatives or enough alternatives, or for those who find return on investment more important than having a planet for the 7th generation, there's not a good enough return on investments that are not somehow attached to dirty energy continuation. So could you share a little bit about the larger picture than just this movement, a little wider picture about the availability of investments like this, be they the type of institutions that existed before or newly created and structured entities like this is, because this is a fresh approach.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, thanks, Bob. Yeah, no, all good questions. The first thing I would say is that I think it was recently, within the last couple of months, determined that the market for solar is now, like, if surpassed that for fossil fuels. So there's more investment now in solar, and I think wind too, versus fossil fuel. There was just an article literally today about how the anti-fragility, I'll say, of solar is increasing because I didn't know this until today, but basically current solar panels are less than 30% efficient at creating energy. And now there's new technology that's being researched and was announced today, where they've been able to bump up that threshold beyond 30%. And that's a big deal because it makes solar more productive. From a financial standpoint, if I maybe as a follow-up to this, I'll post some of these links because I don't have them handy, but the pension funds that were investing in fossil fuel actually lost money, or at least over the last year, perhaps more. And to your comment about, are the returns there? So one, I just mentioned the statistic I just mentioned about fossil fuel investment not paying off anymore. The other is that this Craze Green and platforms like ours and people seeking to do investments like this are often referred to as impact investors. And part of the return that impact investors seek is a positive impact on social and environmental factors. So you will have impact investors who are saying, you know what, I'm not interested solely and completely in just a market-based return. I actually want to see the impact happen, right? So because I mean, really, if this is what I say to people why I'm doing this work, if we don't have a planet to do business on because we've made it unlivable, we're all out of business. So it doesn't matter what the returns are at the end of the day or the era or whatever, however you want to phrase it. But impact investors are willing to do trade-offs. They say, I'll give up, X percent of an expected return because I know that this investment in this company is going to have a positive impact on, energy or environment, or maybe some social program like giving people jobs in a community where there's a high unemployment, things like that. So hope that helps answer the question.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, Dr. Janet has her hand up.
I'm just wondering how this integrates with other climate programs. For example, on my electric bill, I have the choice of having as I understand it, half of my electricity provided by an organization called Arcadia, which has wind farms. And I don't know whether you've ever even heard of Arcadia, but it's certainly another climate change focus program, switching to wind and solar as opposed to fossil fuels. So I don't know whether is Raise Green focused just as a financial organization, or does it integrate somehow with some of the other, there are tons of them out there.
Right. So it is so Raise Green is solely a funding platform for climate solution focused companies. So and it's using the crowdfunding model to do that. Right. So Raise Green is essentially on these companies' behalf issuing some sort of debt security or stock in order to fund companies that are building solar farms or that are building regenerative farming, or one of our companies is develops alternative plastics. Right. So we're we're not technically an exchange, but if you think of it in that way, right? So people come to Raise Green, you could browse all the offerings, see, oh, I really want to invest in alternative plastics. I see a company that offers that. You can read all their terms on their presentation deck. Ask questions on the platform to the founders. And then if you're convinced and you really are moved to invest, then you could do that right on the platform.
But then you select the specific investment from the Raise Green platform. Do I understand that correctly? Or
yeah, Raise Green is basically collecting the money on behalf of the company, but then the company is the one that's going to receive it, and the company is the one that's issuing the security. So you're not investing in Raise Green, you're investing in the company that's listing on our platform.
so Raise Green is kind of a middle person or a middle organization in these transactions. I'm just trying to understand the structure of this.
Yeah. Like Raise Green is helping. So let me just back up. So let's say I was developing a solar farm project, I could go to a crowdfunding platform, something that's called like WeFunder. And I could, if I was savvy enough, I could develop all my materials and I could put it up on WeFunder and say, listen, I want to crowdfund, $200,000 for this project. And I will, I can go ahead and do that. With Raise Green, the difference is that we provide support for those companies who may not have the technical or the business or the financial savvy to be able to be comfortable doing it all on their own.
Okay, thank you.
So we're saving them. So basically we're saying, you know what, focus on the core of what you do in your company, and then we will take care of all of the operational pieces around raising money, at least in the crowdfunding round. They may raise money later on other platforms, but yeah, we're saving of blood, sweat, and tears. By
I guess
helping them.
it would make them more successful if you have people who are professionals in all those different areas. You can't do it all. If they want to concentrate on what their product is, it sounds like you bring a lot of expertise to help them bring it to market and benefit all, maybe.
Yeah, for sure. And the thing is, I've been an entrepreneur before, and I've known a lot of entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs want to do the thing that they are moved to do. They don't always do a really good job at the business minutia.
Right.
And that's why a lot of businesses ultimately don't make it. It's because there needs to be a support structure around operating and then growing the business. And me in particular, I really soured on the solopreneur kind of thing because and this working with Barbara was one of my lessons learned with this, is that co-creation and working collaboratively is just exponentially more powerful.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
absolutely. I have a question. Stephen, you're a well-read person. Have you seen the latest movie by Stephen Greer?
No, I have not.
The Lost Century.
No, I have not.
I'll
write that down.
It's a mind blower. Maybe Jeannie and John have seen it, but you go to the Lost Century film.com. It's on Amazon. I actually bought it. It's so significant. And I was hearing Barbara the whole time, because Barbara always said, all the solutions are already on the planet.
Yeah.
All the solutions are, well, he documents so many of those solutions, which didn't get to market because one things he said was the crazy inventor syndrome. Was that the term, Bob? Crazy inventor syndrome.
Yep.
Where they get a car running on water, or they generate so much more output than what their input is, but they don't share their secret. And then they get bumped off and it goes to the grave with them. And, you know, but he is starting his own research thing. It's going to be open source, and they're going to have it so that everything gets disclosed instantaneously. And I'm just thinking, wow, would it be cool to get, you know, Ray Green and Stephen Greer perhaps connected together,
Yeah.
you know, because they are going to definitely need funding. But the bottom line of what he's after is free energy. And when in the movie, in the film, it demonstrates and shows how free energy could free humanity. Absolutely stunning. Highly recommend it. But I'll stop blabbing.
Yeah, well, I mean, so related to that, there was a piece I read recently about how with, you know, the extra humidity in the air, there's energy in there, and there's been a pilot project to be able to actually harness the energy out of humid air.
And harvest the water out of humid air.
Well,
He
that
shows that
right,
in his film. Yeah.
So yeah, so and, you know, and Barbara, you know, was friends with Buckminster Fuller, and you know, and Buckminster Fuller was all about like energy, or nature has the solutions, like if we're paying attention.
Yeah, I think it was Bucky that convinced Barbara Marx Hubbard to run for vice president.
Yeah.
Just go like, what? And
So I mean,
that-
so here's another thing with, you know, with we don't really have any offers on Raise Green yet, but I'm aware of some nature-based solution technologies that are emerging, where the actually, like, because the ocean is such a big carbon sink, and in particular, you know, like mangroves and such, that from a volume perspective, if we do it right, like mangroves and other ocean life, that's, you know, the plant life, is actually can sink much more carbon than planting trees on land can. So, and it's, again, it's nature knows this, you know, and are we paying attention to nature in order to be collaborative with it? So, yeah, but so thank you for mentioning that film. I'll look that up.
About how many companies does Raise Green is involved with now? Or you're not representing, but you're working with? I mean, is it relatively new, or I haven't heard of it before?
So the company, so it was almost 4 years or so. 2010, 2019 was when we were founded. So, so from our founding to today, we've done 26 climate issues out of like 400. So actually, it's pretty discerning, because basically Raise Green is looking for things that are investable, right? So essentially, you know, looking to work with entrepreneurs who have a proven product. It actually does what it says it's going to do, and ideally they've already made a little bit of money doing it, and now it's ripe for the next level of evolution. And about $6 million have been invested among all of our issues so far. So, and we've got about, according to the statistic that I'm looking at on one of the slides, that is like 21,000 actually members of Raise Green, and I put a link in the chat to sign up. So, and then even probably more importantly, we estimate that through all of the solutions that have been funded on the platform thus far, 52,000 tons of carbon pollution have been avoided.
Wow. I think that's a lot.
It sounds like a lot, right?
Sounds like a lot.
I don't know what, you know, I can't give you a visual to compare it, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So other questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a friend who's been working on implementing a plan with city, like small cities in the Bay Area, where they got onto the ballot initiative, a tax that would fund the city's plans, because what she discovered was most cities have some kind of localized environmental plan to deal with environmental issues that are right in their own area, but they're underfunded. And so they came up with this idea, and I think the city of Albany passed the tax ordinance to raise money for their project. And why not? It seems to me like this would be a happy marriage between the cities already have invested on developing the plan. And then it's the next step is how are they going to implement it? Well, this is where, you know, businesses that have the technology and have been developed can be infused with the city plans to support them. And then with the city having implemented this taxation, so they have the revenue coming in to pay for the plan being implemented. It was a test project that they were doing, I think, last year. I haven't heard yet back how it's going, but they were successful in getting the ballot passed for the taxing. So
Yeah, thank you for that comment, Christy, because that's like, as it's really important that like government step up and participate and be a co-creator in this sector. They're one of the more popular recurring offerings on Raise Green is by the Connecticut Green Bank. So based in Connecticut, of course, and basically what it is investors can invest in bonds that are issued by the Connecticut Green Bank, and they're guaranteed by the Connecticut Green Bank, or I'm sorry, by the state of Connecticut. And then the funds from those bonds, the state uses to actually fund like a lot of solar projects in the state. So it's a way, it's actually a safer way in a way for investors to invest in climate projects, because it's got the guarantee of the state behind it. So so for more risk adverse investors, things like that, where you have a government stepping up and saying, we're gonna cover any losses, or we're going to smooth out the returns, so that especially with like a loan or a bond, we're going to pay what we said we're going to pay on it, and we're going to lower the risk of that defaulting. So
that's good. I'm on the board for my local community. It's a senior mobile home park that has about 300 homes, and one of the things I've been wanting to do is it's owned by a family, but run by a corporation that the family has managing it, but it's a nonprofit. And apparently, from what I'm getting wind of, the family does have, I think they're Catholic based or something. So they have some, philanthropic desires or wishes to help seniors. However, I'm looking at this area where I am, it's an environmental disaster, because they have refused to let any of us plant trees. They have all these beautiful grassy green lawns that they run water on all the time. And they have a very poor unstable electric grid for the infrastructure for the grid, and nobody has solar on their roofs because we're all mobile homes. I don't know what the deal is about why we can't, because my roof looks pretty much normal like any other kind of roof. But and then yesterday was what the hottest
Yeah, we were
hottest
talking
day on
about that.
record. And what are seniors most susceptible? Heat strokes. I mean, I'm thinking here, you know, is to as what I was noticing is as the green, when we were going through the drought thing that was happening last year, the only patches of lawn, because they were forced by the county not to water. But now they're back of watering. The dry patches, the only parts that were surviving were the clover patches. And so I said, well, why don't we have all clover? Clover is a pollinator. You know, it sequesters carbon instead of grass. I've been studying up on clover, green clover grassy areas and
Red clover too. Where are you located, Christy?
I'm in California, in Northern California.
Oh, in Northern California.
Yeah.
Still having that kind of issue. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm kind of like getting ready to put my dukes up and kind of like trying to educate the people, because I'm on the board now. And so I do have a little bit of a platform and trying to educate the people about we need to put something forth to the.
Yeah. But I bet the golf courses aren't brown.
No, the golf courses are not brown.
Well, I tell you.
But yeah, let's get back to Stephen. Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, Christy, so feel free to reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat in a second. But you said a couple of things that kind of got light bulbs going off in my head. Was one that in something like that kind of park, you know, a solar project can make money both for the owners of the park and then as well reduce the rates, the energy rates for the residents, right? So that's one. And we fund we fund those kinds of projects as well. You mentioned, you know, the Catholic aspect of the owners of the park. So there's actually a company called Mission Energy, works with Catholic institutions. So I don't know if it would apply in this case, but basically they pre-fund solar projects that go on churches, seminaries, other Catholic, because the Catholic Church owns a lot of property, right? So basically Mission Energy is helping Catholic churches realize new income streams as membership goes down, right? So they're basically installing solar, they're getting a break on the energy, and then they're selling the rest back to the utilities. So, you know, they're just brainstorming ideas for your park because, there's ways to realize the vision that you have, and be happy to talk to you in detail about it offline.
Yeah, it makes no sense. These rules are just so ridiculous, you know, considering what people actually need. We need big trees shading their homes. So the house across the street from me doesn't need to have air conditioning because it has two giant redwoods on either side and the house is completely shaded and it works.
Yeah, absolutely it does. I grew up in a house that had ivy all over the brick, and we never put the air conditioning on.
Yeah. But it's getting so that we, especially last year when we had a heat wave, oh my God, it was dangerously high for seniors.
Yeah. That's the justice piece of the wheel I was talking about, right? I mean, so there's a whole justice piece of this, is how, you know, supporting people's right to live on the planet.
So Stephen, I would like to invite us to kind of weave back, because I was thinking, you know, there are people on here who, or people might be listening, who, you know, have never considered being able to do this, right? This is what you're expressing. And so a lot of this information may be, it's a lot of information. And of course, people are going to go look at Raise Green and, you know, and like, let's just say someone went, wait a minute, I've never thought I could do anything like this before. I have $100, so if in reality, if that's what you're saying, that there's this new potential, right? And I feel like that's what is always happening through evolution, there are these new possibilities. So how would you speak to that person? Like, would you just say, oh, go look at the website? Or can you feed, for me, I'm getting this feeling of like the heart wants to come into this, people's heart. And so they might not understand, everything that you've been describing, or even speaking with Christy or Noelle, but what can you say? What would be those first steps? And what, in terms of climate advocacy and planetary consciousness and the individual consciousness, how does that, can you speak to that? Because that feels important right now.
Well, so thank you for the question, Shelley. Because like when I hear stories like Christie's, like I hear between the lines, like there's like and with full appreciation for Christy now being in a kind of a position of power on the board, but for other people in that park, right? Like there's a powerlessness because this stuff is happening and the people who are supposed to be stewarding this property don't seem to care, or they're not really doing enough. And so then we apply it to a global, the global level. And I think this is one of the pain points of the climate crisis, where people feel like, yeah, I mean, I'd love to participate and do more, but what do I do? I mean, there's such a massive issue, and if it's hot out, right? It's, we've had the 3 most hottest consecutive days on Earth. Well, what am I supposed to do about that? Me is just little old me, right? So it's so overwhelming that it almost paralyzes us. And so what I would say, as I've gotten, and I've really got involved in this sector of climate finance since last fall, right? So, I mean, I've been in financial services, like I said, but wasn't in this aspect of it. So it's not like I'm coming here with 20 years of experience with this. I'm coming in from an experience in climate finance since like November, October, November last year. And I've learned a lot, and the more I've been in it and the more I've learned about the things that I can do to participate in the way that I am, I realize that it gives me hope, right? It not only satisfies an evolutionary impulse, but then I feel like I'm participating in something that is making a difference. So this is going to loop back to your question. So for people who aren't going to go like Friday school strike, right? I mean, God love Greta Thunberg. That takes a lot of courage what she did. Most of us aren't going to do that, and we've got our reasons for it, which is fine. So we can be involved in something like funding solutions, because again, I'm not a scientist. I mean, I know technology, but I couldn't develop an alternative plastic. I don't have that knowledge set. So, but I can support somebody who does, and so if you have $100 and you say, you know what, I'd like to take this $100 and invest in something that's making a difference. That's what our platform's offering, right? It's offering the application of like your heart's desire to contribute in some way to mitigation of climate crisis through companies that are doing it. And I'll say that to date, Raise Green has raised money for less than 10% of the companies that have applied with us, because there's a due diligence process that basically says, we want to make sure that these companies are investable and they're doing what they said they're doing. So it's not about it's not about saying no more than we say yes. We'd love to say yes to all of them, but we're choosing to say yes to the companies that are actually making a difference and now are ready to scale that up, ready to take the evolutionary leap to the next level. So that's all to say, like, if you're moved to invest and raise green in a company, know that you are investing in something that is making a difference today.
Mhm. And I think it's beautiful because, like, I think of, I mean, I have to think of myself, right? Now, I wouldn't call it invest in different organizations for years. You know, maybe someone's done, you know, Sierra Club, or someone's done Earth Guardians, but something came to me and I felt like I wanted to, as I'm evolving, I'm feeling like, hey, I want to do something different. I want to learn about something new. I want to be involved in something more expansive. You know, I don't know. So life changes, right? And so I feel like what you're doing is really opening a portal to people to begin to explore, right, and understand some of these, you know, potentials. And also, it feels like, you know, I don't know how this works, but it seems like also be part of a community engaging in something more. So I would imagine that you're getting feedback from that investing as well, you know. So so I want to just say, and Janet has another question, and then maybe if you want, if there's anything you want to go back to the slides, something, you know, potent that you want to bring in. And I do have one last question before we complete in, you know, 15 minutes or so. So yeah, so Janet, thank you.
As I understand, I mean, there are lots of ways to invest in organizations that are making, you know, supporting the environment. But it sounds to me as if what Raise Green does is it allows an investor to perhaps make some money through an investment in Raise Green, plus support another organization. Do I understand that correctly or not?
So part of that is correct. So there's no investment in Raise Green. You're an investor is investing in a company that's offering a security through Raise Green's platform.
Okay.
Okay. And now, and just as an aside, Raise Green has raised money as well for itself as a company, but we're actually legally can't raise money for our own company on our platform. We have to go to a different platform to do that. But yeah, if you're signing up as an investor on Raise Green and you like, you know, a company like We Solar or Block Power or, you know, VoltWall or any one of the companies that are listed, you're investing in that company specifically. And then once the investment's made, that company is in touch with you as the investor, and then Raise Green is done.
So how, I'm just trying to understand from the perspective of someone who was, for example, to put money into, does the money go through Raise Green into other companies? Is that the way it works?
No, we're not a fund at all. So basically when the offering, so yeah, this gives me a chance to explain the crowdfunding platform a bit, because when a company, let's say they're going to put their offering on our platform for say 90 days. So in 90 days, they're seeking to raise $100,000, let's say. And then people are investing their money, right? So they're putting their money in and saying, okay, I'm going to invest. That money's held in escrow.
By Raise Green?
Actually, no, we're not legally.
Okay, by whatever company they're investing in.
Well, it's held in escrow by a third party, like a bank.
Okay.
Right. So that it's acting as an escrow agent. All right. So that money's collecting in that escrow account, and then after the 90 days, the company reaches its target, and then the bank pays those funds to the company. And then that company is giving those investors certificates to prove that they've made that investment. What, like a bond.
What would be the difference between going through Raise Green to invest in one of these particular, I guess they're small companies that are not listed on the stock exchange, I am assuming, And just making a charitable donation to an organization that is working on climate change.
I think it's a matter of preference. So if somebody would prefer to invest in or put their money into a nonprofit to do that, sure.
There's an advantage to someone who just makes a donation to a nonprofit because they get a charitable deduction on their tax return. If they go through Raise Green to invest in one of these small companies that's doing good work, would they also get a charitable contribution? You know what? I guess I'm looking for what would be the advantage to someone putting money into this other than supporting a small company that is not on the stock exchange?
Yeah. Well, so I'll just make one of the companies we have on the platform is called Voltwall, VOLTWALL. So it's developing battery technology for EVs, electric vehicles. There's as far as I know, there's not a nonprofit that does that. So if you're an impact investor, you want to invest in climate and you like battery technology, that's where I want to put my money. That's where you would invest in Raise Green.
But
right?
there would be,
I'm sorry, that's where you would invest in Voltwall through Raise Green.
right. But there would be, what I'm trying to figure out is there a return to the person in some respect, to the person who's putting the money in, or is it simply, I've got some money, I want to help this country, I want to make a difference in climate?
Yeah, you're taking a risk as an investor, like you would if you were buying IBM or Apple or any number of stocks on the public exchange. You're either going to make a return or you're going to go up.
Would there be any payback to the investor, as there would be if they were simply to make a charitable contribution to some kind of climate project?
Well, your payback is the return on the investment. So if the company ends up going through, let's say they raise the money on Raise Green, they go gangbusters, now you own stock. Let's say if it was an equity offering and now you own stock in that company.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying to get at.
That's where your appreciation is as an investor.
Okay.
Well, also, I think Janet, I mean, for anyone who's listening, if you have really specific questions, you can probably, Stephen, I think you put your email in. Maybe people can start by connecting in that way in the chat.
There's a comment in the chat from, I think Noel had made it about, let's see. You have to remind me, Noel, you had asked something about investment in Raise Green. Oh, no, so you were not the sole financial backer. We don't financially back the companies at all. So again, Raise Green's an intermediary. We are basically providing the platform for the companies to offer securities on our platform that other investors will invest in. So we don't back any of our backing is the support that we're providing to the company and provide in supporting the publishing of their offering on our platform.
So I discovered something about Raise Green that I thought was really fantastic. And it brings in another whole aspect, which is, and I'm just going to read this. I just thought this was great. There's a gap in the ability of community-based organizations like schools, churches, community centers, nonprofits, and small businesses to get financing for solar and renewable energy projects. We offer a toolkit called the Originator Packet for these types of organizations to develop and finance these type of products. And lastly, and then they pair the projects with individuals or institutions that want to do small to medium scale impact investing. So I just thought that was another whole, like taking it out of the individual to, for people that are connected to communities or organizations to like, like this, a little pop-up, wow, this may be something that my connection to my church or my community, might be able to use this to begin to expand, again, possibilities and potentials for their working as a community. So that I thought that was really great. And we have 5 more minutes. So do you want any
Just there's another question in the chat was around how do you get around stock market rules? Are you insured, FDIC? So we are registered by the SEC and FINRA, which is another regulatory organization for securities markets. So we're so this is the other thing we provide our issuers is that we make sure that their offer is securities compliant, so that there's so that when investors are putting their money into one of our offerings, they know it is on the up and up from a compliance and legal perspective.
Okay, here's the last question, unless you have something else that you want to.
Let me just show one more slide.
Yes, absolutely. Go ahead.
It's important because I want to call this out because where finance gets a bad rap, and rightly so, is that it's a good old boys club. Particularly venture capital. Most of the venture capitalists are white guys raising money for other white guys. What I want to show here is that over 50% of the companies listed on our platform are led by women and people of color, which is more than 10 times the average rate in venture capital. So we are, there's a very focused intention on making it inclusive, not only to investors, but also to our issuing companies. So I wanted to point that out, and then Shelley, happy to take your last question.
Okay. and yeah, so let's all just breathe. This is a lot of great information. So here's my question. So what's the most important message about climate advocacy and planetary consciousness that you could give us all as we, spiral into, leaving here tonight and dreaming on what each individual and community is what's their biggest dream? So I'm just curious at what you might have to say.
Yeah, we're all earthlings, right? I mean, every living being on the planet's an earthling, whether you're plant, animal, vegetable, whatever. We're of the earth. Everything we are, I mean, component wise in these bodies, it's of the earth. We are literally earthlings. And the earth, as I showed you in that Earthrise picture, we see the whole system. We're part of that whole system. And this is Barbara again, right? So we choose to evolve or devolve, right? The kind of the double-edged sword of our intelligence is that we have the intelligence to evolve, and we have the intelligence really to do ourselves in, if that's the choice. And I'm all for evolution. And as an earthling, understanding that my existence on the planet is reliant on the systems all being in order and working in harmony. I want to continue to support a livable planet for human earthlings at the very least. But of course, that all is interdependent anyway. So it involves the forests and animals and bugs. I mean, bugs are a big part of it too. Mm-hmm. So that's the kind of world that I want to support, and I'm doing it. However, the evolutionary impulse is leading me to do it. So that's my answer to your question.
That's beautiful. And I was just looking behind me, and I'm in my grandson's room because I've been helping out my family, and I'm looking at that quilt. And there are these fish looking at all of us in this beautiful terrain of Earth. And I don't know, I just got a little kick out of that, because also we have to be lighthearted about this. We tend to get really gripped, and because it's so important, and also to really be able to trust the Earth, that she's guiding us and giving us information like through you and all of us. So I pass it back to Bob and Noelle, and thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Stephen, so much. It's been really incredibly informative.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Shelley. Thank you, Bob and Noelle, and everyone. I appreciate it. I'm really grateful to have the opportunity.
Thank you. It's just so wonderful to, I love these Thursday night conversations because we get to grow every Thursday night. there's a little bit of growth in between, but you know, we just love when people bring their gift to the shift. This is very exciting. I never heard of Raised Green before. I don't know who the founders are or how they, you know, came up with this, you know, what their background is as conscious creators, because obviously they must be, and they want to co-create with a lot of other people. So I'm so thankful to you, Stephen. They got the right man, the right guy for the job. And thank you everyone for coming. And I just really appreciate you sharing your wisdom with us tonight. And thank you, Shelley. Always good to see you. It was a drink from the fire hose, and I'm going to be looking at that website. And thank you so much.
You're very
May
welcome.
peace prevail on earth.
Thank you, everyone, for being with us.